My name is Silas McRae, and for 2 years, I lived as a ragged pauper on my own massive spread. I inherited the largest gold and railroad empire west of the Mississippi at age 21, but I hid everything completely. I wanted a woman who loved me for my soul, not for the gold mines I commanded in dark silence. So, I wore patched jeans and worked cattle like a hired hand with neither fortune nor any known last name. Everyone in Dust Creek called me the orphan drifter who lived in the broken shack by the deep dark canyon. My real identity stayed locked in a lawyer's vault in Denver, waiting for the day true love finally found me. Then I met Clara at the Spring Barn dance, her hair like spun honey and eyes filled with dancing promises. She laughed when I stumbled over my boots, not in mockery, but with a warmth that melted my defenses. We talked under the stars until dawn, and she said character mattered more than any banknote ever could to her. I believed her because my heart was starving for authenticity, so I courted her with wildflowers and honest devotion. For months we walked the creek bed, and she whispered dreams of a small ranch and a faithful husband forever. She accepted my tin ring with tears, and I swore I would reveal the truth after our wedding blessed together. But her mother visited from the city, wearing silk and scorn, planting seeds of doubt about her dusty pauper fiancé. Soon Clara began sighing at my warm boots, asking if I could ever afford more than this crumbling homestead horizon. I kept the secret burning in my chest, hoping her love would prove stronger than the glitter of town life. Then banker Charles arrived in a polished carriage, smelling of cigars and the arrogance of old money inherited smugly. He started courting Clara openly, gifting her pearl necklaces and promising a mansion in San Francisco by the Bay. I saw her waver, fingers tracing his gold watch, while her promise ring slipped to the ground one bitter evening. She told me she needed time to think, but her eyes already boarded the train leaving my station of dreams. One hot afternoon, I overheard her in the mercantile, laughing to a friend about my pathetic rags and empty wallet. Silas is a sweet fool, but I'm not marrying a man who can't even afford glass windows. She sneered cruelly. My soul turned to ice, and I decided to test her fully one last time before breaking the masquerade wide open. I arranged for my shack to burn down by a careless lantern, losing everything visible, my cattle scattered to nowhere intentionally. Standing in the ash, I found Clara with Charles, and she said, "I can't marry a penniless ruin. Sorry." She dropped my ring into the mud, turned away with a laugh, and linked arms with her banker future triumphantly. I felt the pain twist into cold clarity, knowing the moment of revelation had finally arrived with perfect, merciless timing. The next day, I sent messengers to the county seat, instructing my attorneys to prepare the grand unveiling by sunset. I cleaned up in the river, pulled a tailored black suit from a hidden trunk, and became McRae once again. With a telegram, I summoned the territorial judge, the mayor, and every townsperson to the old pavilion for an announcement. Dust Creek had no idea the owner of the entire valley, including their homes, was the drifter they pitied daily. At 6 o'clock, I strode onto the platform in polished boots, a silver watch gleaming, and silence fell like thunder. Clara stood in the front row, her face pale as milk, clutching Charles's arm while the crowd murmured in confusion. I declared, "My name is Silas McRae, owner of the McRae Gold and Railroad Company, and your lord practically speaking." I held up the deed to the entire township, plus the mine that supplied the bank where Charles held his accounts. Clara's mouth opened like a dying fish, and Charles stepped back, suddenly realizing his inheritance was nothing compared to mine. "You tested me," she gasped, tears streaming. "You tricked me." But I only smiled with the sadness of a wronged king. "I offered you love without price, and you spat on it for a handful of borrowed pearls and empty promises." The crowd gasped again as I revealed I had already bought the bank's mortgage, including Charles's debts, that very morning. I turned to the people and said, "Those who treated me with kindness will never pay another cent of rent." Cheers erupted for the storekeeper and the blacksmith who had given me soup, while Clara fell to her knees sobbing. I knelt beside her one final time, picking up my tin ring from the dirt and slipped it into my vest. This ring was a symbol of a true heart, but you crushed it under the heel of your own greed. I told Charles he could keep her, because a woman who measures love in coin is a permanent liability forevermore. Then I walked off the stage, leaving her wails to be swallowed by the sunset and the town's judgmental whispers. I boarded my private rail car that night and vanished into the mountains, seeking healing in the wilderness of my holdings. For weeks, I camped on my own land, herding my cattle and mending fences, letting solitude stitch the wounds carefully. One morning, a gentle knock came on my cabin door, and a young woman named Lena stood holding fresh-baked bread. She was the niece of the blacksmith, a quiet soul who had once patched my shirt without ever asking for a penny. "I heard what happened," she said softly, "and I wanted you to know not all women break so easily." Her words were simple, yet they wrapped around my heart like a healing balm made of pure sunlight and truth. We began walking the same creek where Clara had whispered lies, but Lena's honesty was as clear as spring water. She never asked about my wealth, only if the calves were strong and if my soul had found any peace yet. I told her my story from beginning to brutal end, and she wept not for the gold but for my pain. One day she handed me a small wildflower, saying, "This is richer than any mine because it grew without lies." That was the moment I knew love had found me, not in a masquerade, but in the open sunlight of grace. I courted her slowly, with genuine humility, and she taught me that forgiveness is the only true redemption for bitterness. After a year, I knelt by the same creek and offered her a new ring, free of tests and hidden shadows. She said yes without hesitation, her smile outshining every gold nugget I'd ever pulled from the earth's dark veins. We married in the town chapel, with the blacksmith giving her away and the whole community celebrating genuine love finally victorious. Clara had long since left with Charles, who lost everything when I foreclosed on his debts, leaving them stranded in poverty elsewhere. I never felt triumph in their ruin, only a quiet release, because holding anger is like drinking poison and expecting healing. Lena and I built a new ranch house with a wide porch, where the door was always open to strangers and friends. I poured my wealth into the county, building schools, a hospital, and a rail spur that brought prosperity to every family. My disguise was gone, and with it the bitterness, leading a man who had finally learned that trust must be planted tenderly. Every evening, Lena and I watched the sunset, and she traces patterns on my hand, never once asking about the past gold. Our children will inherit not just an empire, but a story of how their father chose love over glittering revenge beautifully. The old shack by the canyon I turned into a way station for travelers, marked with a sign reading, "Second Chance Inn." Sometimes I ride out alone, touching the tin ring I still carry, not out of longing but as a reminder of growth. It reminds me that a heart tested by fire can emerge tempered, not broken, ready to love without conditions forevermore. Now the McCrae name echoes through the West, but our greatest wealth is the laughter that fills our humble kitchen daily. Lena taught me that the highest gold is a home where love is never auctioned to the loudest bidder's greed. We host a harvest feast every year, and the whole town gathers, dancing under strings of lanterns like a family forgiven. The blacksmith, now my uncle-in-law, toasts to the day a drifter turned out to be the honest foundation of hope. I stand and tell the young folks, wealth can buy a bed but never a dream. Only integrity builds a legacy. They listen with wide eyes, and I see a new generation understanding that gold glitters, but heart faith burns eternally brighter. Clara wrote me once, a letter from a boarding house, filled with regret and pleas for another chance I could never grant. I sent back only a small wildflower seed from Lena's garden, a silent message that real love grows from rooted soil. I do not hate her now. I simply became a man who learned the difference between a mirage and a river. The ranch prospers, not from the mine, but from the honest sweat of hands that plant and harvest in rhythm with grace. Lena works beside me, her skirts dusty, her laughter spilling like sunshine over the barley fields every single blessed morning. Our firstborn son has my eyes and her steady spirit, and we named him Ethan, meaning strong and enduring forever bound. I will teach Ethan that a man's worth is measured not by his vault, but by the loyalty he gives freely. Already he plays with the blacksmith's grandchildren, never knowing his father owns the very ground beneath their joyful running feet. I sold the old mine shares and invested in water projects, turning dusty gulches into orchards that feed the entire territory. The railroad now carries fruit instead of just ore, a symbol that life can shift from cold metal to living sweetness. At night, I pen these words in a journal, hoping one day a broken soul reads them and finds courage to forgive. Forgiveness is the key that unlocked my heart, not the revelation of power, though that moment was necessary for clear truth. Lena reads over my shoulder and kisses my temple, saying, "You turned ashes into a garden, my love. Never forget." And I never will, because the scent of those wildflowers still reminds me that genuine love seeks no disguise and demands nothing. So to anyone hiding behind fear, I say, reveal your true self, and the right heart will meet you without price. Please subscribe to Stories Hub Official. Smash that like button and tell me your thoughts in the comments below kindly. Remember, gold may echo in the canyons, but only love carves its name on the rock of a lasting soul. Until our next tale, may your own story find the courage to shed every mask and claim a kingdom of truth.